How you doing, guys? Eric from rulthewasteland.com. I return to you now. Or what does he say? I come back to you now at the turning of the tides. There's a reason I've been talking a lot about gold and silver lately. First of all, because I love it. Showed you one of my favorite pieces before. But also because everything I've been talking about for the past 15 years is finally starting to happen. And it's been a very frustrating time for me because I wish I had a lot more, and I've been trying to have a lot more, but I'm terrible at making money. I'm actually pretty good at investing it, even though my timing might be a little off. Terrible at making money. Is this froze up again? Oh, I had the wrong camera plugged in. Give me just a second. I'm going to plug in the old one. All right, just a second. Sorry for that. I had been playing around with. What are we doing here? Come on, buddy. Come back. Can you guys hear me? I will be back in a second. Just gotta. There we go. Okay. I had been playing around with that other camera, which I actually bought used, but to see if it was even worth keeping. And so I still had it plugged in. Apparently, it is not worth keeping because the thing's a giant piece of shit. How is everyone? Are we back? Sorry for the delay there. Did that ever actually freeze up, or is it just on my end? I think it just was on my end, but it doesn't look as good anyway, so it doesn't matter. But we'll go with that. So sorry, that was an awkward start. Had to use my old man glasses. So we have silver and gold going through the stratosphere, but I've seen a lot of people talking about it going down. And I actually, despite what you people might think, despite my raging hard on for gold and silver and my diehard belief that they are the place to be, I still believe this is like boomers had real estate. We have gold and silver if you're a millennial and you knew what was going on. I still think we're in that time. I still think that $50 silver, $4,000 gold, while it's expensive relative to what we've had for decades, years, it's still nothing when it compared to what is actually going to happen. But there's a reason for that. If central banks are doing a vast majority of the buying, how could it go down a lot? Well, I'm going to explain why I think it could go down significantly temporarily, but it's very temporary, and it's due to the fact that there was a very good video, not to cut myself off, about it was a talk, a three-way talk. I forget whose channel it was on. They hosted a multi-way discussion and had Market Sniper and that guy Henry Zeberg, who has been very vocal about he thinks that the gold and silver will go down initially. And I agree kind of with both of them. I agree very much so with the Market Sniper's general um thesis about why gold and silver going up, why it's where you want to be, why in 5, 10 years, of course, it's to play. But I think the mistake that he was making in thinking about why there can't be any dip is because his argument was basically that would be stupid for people to like sell off gold and silver or for it to go down in price. And you're right, it would be very stupid, but that has never been impediment to people doing things. If people weren't stupid, it would already be $1,000 an ounce for silver. We wouldn't have Nvidia at the prices that it's at and all these other companies being it. We wouldn't have people using this stupid fiat money to begin with. If everyone knew what was going on and did the things that made the most logical sense, given the currency and economic structure, the complete disregard of the value of the currency being robbed from us daily, then the entire system would be different to begin with. So looking at the system and saying this would require a lot of people to do a lot of stupid stuff for that to happen, that's probably what's going to happen. And I still think you don't realize, even people, or especially rather people who are in our position, who watch my videos, who watch Peter Schiff videos, who know who the market sniper is, who know who any of these people are, who even could get within $10 of telling you the gold and silver price. Even most of the people uh, who know what gold and silver are, like no one outside of these groups has any idea what's going on. Like I occasionally I'll be like at the poker. I mean, I'm always at the poker table, but occasionally at the poker table, I'll see a guy who has like a silver eagle as a card protector or something, and I'll be like, "Oh, silver!" And even most of those guys are like, "What? Oh, they don't know what how much silver is." Or they're like, "Oh yeah, I got this because I was in silver eagle or Canadian maple or whatever." They're not even really like silver stackers. So the vast majority of people who own gold and silver, or maybe not the majority, but a huge portion at least of even the small percentage, most people don't even own any. Of the small percentage of people who do own any, even most of them are mostly normie minded people. They don't really have a good understanding of exactly what's going on with the monetary system. They couldn't really explain money, what's going on. And beyond that, a big percentage of the people who own gold and silver, especially the traders and the ones who act quickly and act most dramatically, it's all in paper. So I really do think and agree with like the Zybergs and the other people that think that when there is, it's not guaranteed, but if slash when we do get a tremendous market drawdown, a crash, a correction, whatever you want to call it, that all these institutions and people there'll be a huge rush for liquidity, which even if it's a bad idea, initially is going to be into cash, into the dollar, because what other choices do you have? Like they're not going to be looking at the situation when they're getting a huge margin call and seeing their entire portfolio tank and seeing paper silver tank and go, oh, I'm going to sell off everything but my gold and silver. They might not, they probably don't have a lot to begin with. It will be one of the more liquid things that they have, still probably has some value compared to like their Nvidia stock and also their bullshit that's crashing. And I think they are going to be affected by that initially because the paper market, we're going to probably see a separation from the paper market, but the paper market at first will go down with everything else that's paper. And most of these dealers and everywhere you buy gold and silver and either other people are going to still be basing their valuation of gold and silver off the markets, off what it's shown on the paper price. Like premiums may go up and shit like that, but I do think the official price of gold and silver will initially go down in such a crash. And but I think it'll be brief for all the reasons that it's going up right now. None of those reasons will have changed, but I do think it'll go down initially. May only be a matter of days, maybe not even that long. Probably would not be more than a matter of weeks. Like I said, could be maybe only days or hours. I think it'll represent a good buying opportunity for people who have any cash and want to get more gold and silver from these desperate people who are trying to sell. Um, because a lot of the real physical holders like myself will not be selling into that. We don't need the liquidity to cover margin calls and a bunch of money that we have in wildly over priced and overvalued stocks. So yeah, we aren't going to be selling. So a lot of people who are trying to sell, um, we can buy from them because all the people who don't already want it will be trying to sell at the same time. So that causes prices to go down. But I think it will be temporary. And but I do think it will happen if we see a crash because people don't know what's going on. For gold and silver to not crash along with everything else, all these people, the vast majority of people that even the ones who own gold and silver, especially paper gold and silver, would have to understand what's going on. And I don't think they do. So that's my main thesis on the subject is that they just don't know what's going on. And if, like I said, if all these people that would sell gold and silver or that would have to liquidate gold and silver when these crashes to make it go down, if all those people knew what was going on, they would already be liquidating all their other stuff for gold and silver, and we wouldn't be in that position to begin with. And you're seeing all the people who are talking about gold and silver going down, talking about it from a trading perspective, which is not the right way to look at it in my mind. In fact, I'd already formulated an analogy for this live stream that I just saw Clive Thompson made a video using my exact analogy about, I mean, it's a common one about using the Titanic and the lifeboats and whatever. So I'm not copying from him. But Like if you were to track the value of the lifeboats like a market on the Titanic, when it first hit the iceberg, the value would probably spike. Oh my God, the ship hit something. The life rafts are now worth 10 times as much. And then 15, 20 minutes later, when everyone's like, no, guess everything's fine. They remember the ship's unsinkable. The value will go down. Even though the ship is actively sinking, they just don't know it. The value would go down. You could do the chart um, technical analysis and be and all this stuff and say, oh, it's at a high, we should have sold there, whatever. But the bottom line is if you're selling gold and silver, you're doing it just to get dollars. Like maybe you gain more dollars, but that's the whole thesis that I'm talking about this entire time is that we need to think about is that we are not buying gold and silver. This is the money. This is the real asset. What we need to be thinking about is selling dollars, selling the fiat currency. If you think about that, if you think about like I were to get rid of this and now I have this, I should be thinking, why do I have this? What am I expecting to happen to this? Why am I getting rid of this just because it's slightly worth more of these right now? Um, just like if you were on the Titanic and you're like, wow, I turned my $1,000 life raft into $10,000. Now I have $10,000 as you plummet into the icy depths and die. You know what I mean? Like when it really comes down to it, getting even if it does crash to $1,000 an ounce for gold and back to 20, 15 or $20 for silver, the reason I have it is not a trade. It's because I expect within the next 0 to 10, 15 years that we will have a massive global crisis in the currency and financial systems. And when that happens, the only thing that is going to matter is ounces, acres, whatever other natural resources you have. It won't matter that you paid $5,000 or $1,000 or $10,000 because the only thing you will actually be able to use, just like when the Titanic is sinking, is the actual lifeboat itself. Appreciate that very much, Krakatoa. Says electric cash for a silver dime. Hell yeah, that will definitely go towards a silver dime. Um, so like what difference does it make if you were to be on the Titanic and you have your lifeboat because you saw it hit the iceberg or you see it coming and you know it's gonna hit the iceberg, than to see it spike when it hits and you're like, God, I did the right thing. And then knowing that it's gonna go down, are you going to sell? Why? We know why we have this. It's not because we're trying to make money off of it. At least that's not why I'm doing it. I think I will make money off of it in capital gains terms. I have made a lot of money off of it. But if it were to go to, I want gold and silver to go down. I don't have as much as I want because I'm planning for like just like lifeboats. I have 15 people, maybe let's say, and I have one lifeboat. I want to get another lifeboat. So I'm not going to be mad when the lifeboats get cheaper. I'm going to be very happy about that because I have the lifeboat for when we have to use it, put it in the water, get people in it. I don't have it because I want to buy it for 1,000 and sell it for 2,000. I have it because the ship's going down and I know we're going to need to use it. So that's why I am looking forward to any crashes. It's also possible that we don't get one. I really do think I've said the entire time that I've been making these videos in the recent few years when it's been pretty clear that we are imminently approaching all these financial difficulties that I do think we will hit like inflation, big crash, super melt up. But it is totally possible that we just ramp right into the melt up and they never actually have a major crash, that they turn on the printers because they see this shit coming and they want to head it off, that sort of thing. It's possible that we never actually have a massive crash, but I think we will, if not like a correction, because there's just too many deflationary forces, and I don't think that they're going to want to turn on the full naked money printing, naked monetization of assets, naked price controls, things like that, yield control, and still until they really have to. Because if they do that early, it'll be like their fault. And they'll probably still pretending that they can probably grow our way out of it or whatever else other nonsense. Pretty bad. Let's read a few comments. Um, as I drink from my freedom cup here. What do we got? What do we got? If central, oh, I already addressed that. If central banks are during a vast majority of buying, how could it go down a lot? Because of paper markets, I think central banks are buying physical. And if all the central banks doing all the buying have it where it's at, and also retail's also doing a lot of buying, if the retail market, if the entire everything is fleeing from the markets, people are just rushing into cash because it's all they understand. People do not view this as money. That's what I'm trying to tell you is that they're like, if people knew what was going on you already wouldn't be able to get any of this. We wouldn't be in this situation to begin with if the people understood what was going on. Do central banks know what's going on? Kind of, more so than the average person, but they're still pretending they can weasel their way out of this, I think. Or no country would be holding, U.S. treasuries or anything. At 4,200 plus, there will be some profit taking on gold for sure. I mean, there will at every level up. Some people who are traders will find that exit point, be like, I can make profit here, whatever. And I even was watching an interesting video. I think it was Commodity Culture. And Christopher Mullen, one of the trader guys, was on there, and the host, I forget his name, actually asked him that basically, like, what's the point of getting rid of gold and silver to make more dollars if we think the dollars are what is going down? And he literally came out and said, like, I'm a trader. I make my decisions based on can I make a profit in nominal terms. He's like, you can go crazy looking at all the other stuff, blah, blah, blah. And that's true. But I mean, there it is. Even the traders who are with it agree that that's what they're doing and realize that they may be wrong about that. And I'm simply saying, like, what's the point of me saying, okay, I turned $25 into $50 and now I have the dollars again. But the whole reason I got gold and silver to begin with is because I don't trust the dollars and I think it's going down in value. And it is, and that's why gold and silver is going up in relative to dollars. So why do I want dollars back now when it's actually happening? I don't. And I want to buy more. So if it happens to go down in the meantime because people are stupid and don't understand what's going on, then absolutely bring it on. I hope it goes down to five. I hope there's blood in the streets and I can get gold and silver for $5 an ounce and $300 an ounce. That would be glorious. Until they fix what's going on in the monetary system, I want as much of it as possible, and I don't want any fiat. Banks are going down soon. Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff going on in regional banks. Gregory Mannarino has been doing a lot of work on that. I think he's moved most of his stuff into a paid. He only puts like clips on YouTube. He doesn't do full videos anymore. So most of his stuff's on his paid Substack. And but he's been talking a lot in the emails and everything about the trouble in the regional banking system. CLM says fiat is the worst thing you can ever be in, ever. Get out of cash. Honestly, buying 3 tons of ham is better. I tend to agree. That's what I've been ranting about for like 20 minutes. Bro, I think 10 to 15 years is being kind of optimistic before the system collapses under its own debt weight. I absolutely agree. That is my Kentucky windage mentally, adjusting for the fact that I'm just always seem to be a little early on these things. If I were to go by what I feel, like my gut tells me this shit is happening now. But when it comes to similar stuff in the past, I've always been a little bit early on these calls. So I'm pushing it out because just to kind of show that it doesn't matter. Like even if this takes 5-10 years, whatever, that's probably better for people like me who don't have a lot of wealth to prepare right now and can do it slowly over the next few years. But if you already have your preps or you're older even than I am, it would probably be better to get this over with than to have it dragged out. But I'm not as ready as I would like to be, especially financially. You do not need a crash to know that fiat is the worst thing to invest in. Anything else? Okay, I already read about it. Yeah. Good evening to South Florida. It's inflation or gold revalue 150K. Yeah, I mean, same thing. The gold revaluation is a trick. It's a monetary shuffling of, Monte Carlo game, whatever they call that, call that thing, 3-card Monte, whatever. They're not doing anything. It's an accounting trick, the revaluing gold. It's literally just money printing. It's just making it so that it doesn't look like they're saying, we made more money. They like, oh, we sold our gold, but we only sold it to the Fed, who can't do anything else with it, and we still own it. They just have gold certificates, so we can sell it again if we want. It's bullshit. It's complete bullshit. But they might do it. They're on my prediction spreadsheet. I have several people who are claiming that the Trump administration is going to do a gold revaluation, specifically claiming July of next year is when they're going to do it. And other people like Clive Thompson who think it's very likely, but haven't necessarily predicted a specific time or anything like that. But it doesn't matter. I mean, that would make it blow up very quickly and at a specific time, but it doesn't. The point is the same. They're moving away from the dollar. They have to. The dollar is dying. There's absolutely nothing they can do about it. If you were to fix the system even fixing it, even doing the right thing, even if Ron Paul was rejuvenated to a 35-year-old man and became president and did everything right, we would deal with most of these issues still. We'd come out of the other side a lot better, but we'd still be dealing with most of these issues and the consequences of everything that has happened up to this point. It's entirely possible to put yourself or to be in a position to wake up, whether you put yourself there or someone else did. It's entirely possible to be in a position where there are no good outcomes, where you can't escape the consequences of what's already been done. And that's where we're at. When we can kind of ameliorate some of them, especially on a personal level, if we do the right things, but we can't undo everything that's been done. And everything we've seen up to this point is showing us that, as usual, the governments and the powers that be and everything else are not going to do the right thing. They're going to do the things that kind of allow them to maintain control and control the dissent in their mind, which is why there's never going to be an actual just like deflationary default collapse. They're always going to go for the money printing option because if the government has no money, they can't do anything. So they'd rather have infinite fake money even than they would just actually not having any money and thus no power. Because even if you have all the tanks and the guns, if you can't pay those guns, the gunmen, or feed them, then you can't do anything. And that's literally what would happen if you went the default route and the money disappeared from the system. A lot of U.S. treasuries being sold and converted into gold. Yeah, because there's at least some people out there that know what's going on. You can't eat gold, but you can't eat stag chili. Damn straight. I've dealt with that argument before. It's absolutely true, but it's kind of pedantic. It's like pointless to make that argument for most preps because it's true of any prep. Not that you can't eat it, but that you can't do anything else with it other than what you have it for. Like, I can't eat gold. I can't store my wealth in stag chili, probably. I can't dig a hole with stag chili. I can't power my electronics with stag chili. I can't heal an infection with stag chili. It's not that good. I can't hunt game with stag chili. I can't defend my property with stag chili. I mean, unless you got like a fucking 90-mile-an-hour pitch or something, maybe. But the point is that, like, it's true. Gold and silver is not for food preps. Everything, each category of preparation is for its own purpose. Tools for doing what they are used for. Food for feeding yourself. Water for hydrating yourself. Medicine for healing yourself. First aid supplies for dealing with injuries. And toiletries for keeping you in good health and good hair. And gold and silver for financial preparation, storing wealth, trade, everything else that currency has been used for over the years. So you can't eat gold. Very true, but mostly meaningless. Mateo says, I am leaving SWF and moving back with my parents in NYC. Jobs are terrible. Can't find nothing. I have experience. Yeah, the job markets are getting bad. I think it's continued to get worse, unfortunately. I'm not sure what to do about that. I'm not the expert. SPQR says, for the first time, there is a little more gold in global central banks than U.S. debt. Interesting and scary. It shows that people, like the people who have all the money, know what's going on. They're getting out of the dollar or trying to. When the balloon, CLM says, when the balloon goes up, when Western civilization melts down and all civilization is lost, we will know our kin by wolf chili flatulence. Wolf chili is solid. It's cheaper. I do prefer stag chili, though. It's the true separates the connoisseurs. Wolf chili, though, is like price to dollar ratio ultimate, though. So again, it's still fine. Not quite as good, though. U-Haul truck costing me $800 one way, not including gas or food or tolls. Yep. That's where we're getting at. Eric, what are your thoughts on the worst thing that could happen? Interesting. I mean, I actually think the worst thing that could happen is not just like the most devastating. If like a comet obliterates the entire planet, that's not the worst thing that could happen. I think the worst thing that could happen would be something that devastates order and like in rule of law and all that stuff and infrastructure without actually killing all that many people, because that's what would cause a bunch of horrific situations to arrive. Like if you had something like an EMP widespread in the entire country, that's probably one of the worst case scenarios. Because even something like a pandemic, if it's really bad and you wipe out like the Stand or whatever, I'd much rather go through that. You're either dead or you're in a world where there's 90% fewer people. Much better than an EMP where for a few months everyone like all infrastructure is down, but everyone's alive and going ham and just dying and killing each other and warlord and like that's probably the worst. Would be like a widespread EMP. Second to that would be like extreme techno tyranny by the government, but that wouldn't necessarily require grid down. So 98 mph Nolan Ryan stag chili can defense. Exactly. I think he had not Nolan Ryan, but Randy Johnson, I think, said he kept a bag of balls by his bed for home defense. That would hurt. Um, yeah, months-long power, months or like permanent power outage, widespread, not just one state or county or whatever, but like the entire country. That would be the worst for sure. Because a lot of our preps would even not work. And everything would just be like back to the Stone Age, but all the people would initially still be alive. So that would even be worse than like nuclear war, in my opinion. Excuse me. So yeah, that's it. So that's pretty much all I got. Let me go the prizes I didn't show you. So for the Patreon, the paid Patreon members, and I'm probably gonna switch to Substack at some point. Patreon is just weird, feels old school to me, but I appreciate everyone who's on there right now and continue to do it until I let you know. Um, Set of three Zulu throwing knives and a some kind of case. Pretty badass. Double-edged throwing spikes. So you could throw them with no spin, you could throw them with spin. Pretty cool. And then we'll also be giving away another one of these fire blankets. I think are a hugely underrated prep, especially to have in your car or even in like a plate carrier. I've seen increasingly more videos, especially with civil unrest and riots and whatever else, where people get caught on fire, either purposely or accidentally. The blanket won't necessarily do you much good for like structure fires or whatever. If your room's on fire, you can't really use a blanket. But if you're like a pan on the stove or whatever, you can throw it over it. Maybe an engine compartment in your car, it might work. You can still get oxygen from underneath it, but it's best for if you or someone else is on fire, they go down, smother them with this fireproof blanket. Good to have around and not doesn't really have a shelf life like even some fire retardant sprays would that need pressure and then they eventually go out. So if you have several of these lying around 20, 30 years in the future, it'll still probably be fine. And you could even theoretically use it more than once. You're not supposed to, according to the manufacturers, but it's just a fiberglass blanket. So you definitely could use it more than once and it would probably still work. So, all right. So I'm trying to watch the end of this Falcons game, but if you guys have any, signed by Randy Johnson, you'd have to get a hold of him. I bet he could wing one though. SU says we cannot go back to the Stone Age because there's metal tool and weapons everywhere. Sure, whatever. But you know what I mean, or you don't. People don't know how to do anything with that. How many people actually have the ability to like and tools and stuff to melt down a leaf spring from a car and turn it into something else? Like, the metal's there, but in terms of technology that most people would have available to them, it would be 150 years, 200 years lost instantly with an EMP, with most people not being even remotely prepared to go without electronics and electricity for days. And the worst part about it is that, like, if the power were just to go out, like widespread grid down is different than an EMP because grid down, like if the grid were to just shut down right now, obviously we wouldn't have communication. Obviously we wouldn't have grid power, but I have power banks. I have flashlights. I have walkie-talkies, um, shit like that. We could still use all your kitchen appliances. If you wanted to use your coffee grinder, your blender, your toaster, microwave, whatever. And I have some of that stuff EMP protected when I store it. But I mean, I can still pull up my cell phone with information on it or use the camera or use the, if people have, hard drives with information on it, all that shit. Like all the electronics would still work if you had power, which some of us have set up to have some power usually. So not nowhere near as bad to just have a widespread grid down versus a widespread grid and all electronics destroyed. That would be completely devastating. Watches not work, like everything not working. If it was really like a real one, just there's I don't think there's much worse in my opinion than that. Yeah, no TikTok, no big boob Latinas on Instagram. Like I'm talking real end of the world stuff. The worst case scenario. Kentucky prepper. So, can you charge your power bank? I have solar panels. So yes, I can. Watch the Pakistan truck repair people. Yeah, I mean they do some crazy stuff, but like I've mentioned before with the people talking about like homesteading. Homesteading is great, don't get me wrong, but some people misunderstand how truly disconnected you are from the grid. If you were to watch one of these videos of like the Pakistani truck repair people where they pull apart an electric motor and rewire it with the copper wire and everything, they're like incredibly resourceful, using garbage to actually fix things, you still see inputs. Like they have to use some sort of chemical or like flux when you're doing blacksmithing or something like that, a tool that wears out. Some inputs are still needed. They are way more resourceful than like a random person. They need fewer inputs usually, and ones that maybe are less fickle in terms of supply and demand or whatever, but there's always inputs unless you're making everything yourself. And the more complex the system is, like a truck, I mean, like you still have inputs going into it. Like how, like in these Mad Max type movies, like how long is rubber working before it dry rots? Are they making tires? How are they doing this? You know what I mean? Um, you have to have every level of supply chain taken care of, or eventually you're going to run out of one of the inputs. It doesn't matter which one you run out of. Some things you can bypass, like you don't have to make your AC working in the car. Maybe you'll put like some new type of wheel on there that doesn't require rubber or air or whatever, but like you're losing functionality, you're losing inputs slowly, and all this stuff would eventually molder and deteriorate and everything else, and you have to be able to create things. It's a limited hangout unless you can charge it off grid. Correct. That's why I think it's very important to have some sort of charging capability, whether it's solar, wind, or even I really have want to build, and I have not seen like a cranking generator. The only cranking generators I've ever seen are like the hand crank, weak ass ones, or like even the bicycle ones. Like you can hook up. There's no real, as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but they don't have a real no one out there that I know of has like a relatively cheap, robust generator that you could have the option to connect it like a sprocket on that you could connect a bunch of different things. And I think a smart way to do it would be to like come up with some kind of reducer so that like if you were to hand crank, let's say for example, you're not doing much work in terms of like mathematically per crank. So you have to do a ton of it. So like cranking for like an hour, you're doing less work than if you deadlifted like 300 pounds, lifted it off the ground one time. So if you had some way that you could like, like a grandfather clock to where you move the weight, it doesn't need that heavy of a weight move to generate the clock. It uses it continuously when you wind it, like wind it. Um, you're doing all the work at once instead of having to go in there and go click, 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 click each time. You just go and crank a spring. And you could do an equivalent of that where you like lift a big heavy weight, even with the hydraulic jack, like jack it up, 2,000 pound weight, spend 5 minutes jacking it up, and then it could do the equivalent work of a hand crank for like hours and hours and hours if you had some kind of reducing mechanism like clocks do. And I'm wonder why no one's ever done that, where you could just take a weight, put it on, like build like a kind of clock mechanism that's just designed to turn an electric motor, and all you have to do is like put a bunch of weights on there and then let it go just cranking. And you could run a light like all night, run a light, or you could charge something bigger much more quickly. And then at the end of the day, you take the weight off, lift it up, put the little weights on there one at a time, and you could do it the same amount of work as cranking for 5 hours, but you could do it in 1 minute. It'd be harder, and you're just condensing the work into it by doing much more difficult work much more quickly. but maybe I'm retarded. I might not understand what the fuck I'm talking about. Someone with a physics degree and an electrical engineering degree. Send me some plans. We'll build this thing and I'll promote it. Lots of car parts around. Yeah, but how long do those last? And car parts are not interchangeable. They're very specific. Go tap the battery in a few hours. Buildings created artificial wind tunnel. Go tap the battery. And I'm not sure I understand that one. Catalina says, hello, sir. Watching right now from the Philippines. Awesome. Glad you could make it. A sand battery is what you described. Interesting. Silver's having a comeback. Actually, the dollar is having a death. That's what I think is happening. A transmission, yeah, of gears, but with like a yeah, but designed to charge a crank at a continuous speed. Yeah, car parts can last for a long time, but there's every car has parts that don't last a long time. And all of those would wear out in the same amount of time if they're not being made. Like if there's a car part that lasts 5 years, and there's all sorts of things where you go to get one, and because even if it hasn't been used, sitting on a shelf, they tend to deteriorate. Things with bushings and seals and things like that can dry rot or get brittle or whatever. Radiator hose or some shit like that. So you could do a lot of jerry rigging and everything, but like eventually you run out of some input into the system if you don't have a way to recreate it. Not putting that many RPMs through it. Through what? A water wheel? Bright Eyes says, the US sending all that money to other countries is only hurting us. Absolutely. Especially because it's money we don't have. So they're stealing that purchasing power from anyone who is holding dollars. That's why you have to hold this, because they're not sending gold and silver to other countries. They're sending this. They're just making it out of thin air. Brand new alternator should last a decade. Sure, lots of car parts last even longer than that. But when they eventually break, what are you gonna do? Like how long do spark plugs and everything, and they have to be the right ones? And like I said, you can do a lot of jerry rigging, but Mad Max and all these shows, it's like decades or even longer past the collapse, and they're not making these things again. But yeah, so appreciate you guys watching. I will be making. I'll be kind of out of commission for about a week here coming up at the end of October. Be a little busy, so I will probably miss definitely one, maybe two live streams. I will definitely miss the 26th of October. Probably miss the 1st of no or 2nd of November, but might make that one. So just giving you guys a heads up. And then after that, I'm going to start doing hopefully the interview, either channel or series on this channel. And then I have a list of ideas I'm doing for a prep of the week video that I'm gonna start to quit slacking off, actually start making some videos for you guys. So I appreciate you watching, and remember to sign up for paid Patreon if you want to be eligible to win a set of 3 throwing knives and the fiberglass fire blanket. Appreciate you watching, guys, and I will talk to you soon.